Hey guys, it's Mike here, and I just saw the movie Pig, starring Nicolas Cage and being directed by Michael Sarnowski. Now, I've been a fan of Nicolas Cage ever since I was a kid, with my favorite movie of his probably being Con Air.
Put the bunny back in the box.
At one point during the 90s and early 2000s, Nick Cage was really a big box office star and a household name, who made a number of great and exciting movies, and even won an Oscar. But then he fell on hard times financially, and he started being in practically everything that would pay him, which resulted in a lot of really bad movies, and a lot of really strange acting decisions as well, where he started to become even more over the top and insane than he had been in the past movies such as Face Off, and started basically screaming and doing insane things in practically every film he did, usually with mixed results. But among those movies, especially in recent years, there have been a number of gems, such as the movie Mandy, directed by Panos Cosmatos. But nonetheless, going into this movie, I had heard it actually was pretty good, in that Nick Cage gave a strong performance. But that's about all I knew about it going in, so I didn't have any expectations. And upon seeing the film, I ended up being pleasantly surprised, and really ended up enjoying it for the most part. So let me get into the plot first. The film centers around Rob, played by Nicolas Cage, who's a truffle hunter who uses a trained pig to find and acquire them for sale. He's completely disconnected from modern society in the wake of a personal tragedy, living in essentially a log cabin in the woods without so much as a telephone. However, one day in the midst of the night, Rob's pig is stolen from him, with the thieves leaving him a bloody mess. And so as a result, he teams up with his middleman, the person that he was selling the truffles to, named Amir, played by Alex Wolff, who's involved in a number of underground dealings in Portland, Oregon, where the majority of this film takes place. Together, the two of them search for the ones who took Nicolas Cage's pig, slowly descending into this interesting underworld of restaurant owners and getting involved in some high-stakes situations before discovering the truth behind everything. So as I said, I didn't have any expectations going in, and I ultimately ended up really enjoying this film. And as for the things I really liked about it, I would have to of course first talk about Nicolas Cage, who gives the best performance I've seen from him in a very long time. Much of this film really hangs on the performance that he gives, of this kind of reserved but intense person, who you can tell is dealing with a lot of personal trauma, and situations that caused him to go off the grid. At times he kind of comes across as a closed off and disheveled homeless person, but then along the way he gives these really insightful and kind of deep monologues about what it is to lose something, about truly caring for something in your life, and in many ways the frail nature of humanity, especially when he starts talking about natural disasters and things that'll happen along the way, some of which are done for quirky humor, and other ones that are done to make a point, and serve the overall narrative purpose of the film. Ultimately, Cage is being driven here in his goals by love, and the desire not only to be reunited with a tool for his business, but also a beloved pet. In some ways, the film almost kind of feels like a John Wick type story, only told from a very different perspective, and instead of going around and killing everyone in sight and being over the top violent, finds a very different way to resolve a number of the issues in the way. Although there certainly are some dark moments and things that you might consider to be action along the way. Most of the other performances in the film are really good as well, such as Alex Wolff playing Amir. You may remember him from being in the more recent Jumanji remakes, and I think he does a really good job here as well, playing a kind of neglected son who's trying to make his way and build up his name in the underground and these kind of shady business dealings he's involved in, while at the same time having his own personal tragedies. At first, he and Nicolas Cage don't exactly get along, but over time you could see a bond that starts to develop over the course of this journey, in a way that changes both characters by the time the film comes to an end. And also, I thought that Adam Arkin gave a really good performance as Darius, another high-ranking businessman and influential person in the underground. Although, much like many of the other characters in the film, there are more layers to him, and you could see that he's also going through a number of his own personal problems, much like Nicolas Cage and Alex Wolff, although handling it in a way that isn't necessarily the best for his son or pretty much anyone else around him. And a lot of the drama of the film really revolves around this. But really, the biggest appeals of the film for me really came down to the direction by Michael Sarnowski and the cinematography by Patrick Scola. This was the first feature film for Michael Sarnowski, and he did a really great job, not only directing the actors, but framing a number of the scenes and shots throughout. And additionally was one of the writers of the film, so you could tell that there was a very unique vision on display that was all all entirely his, which is present all throughout the film. Whether it be the shots of nature, the juxtaposition between the more natural world that we start in the deep underground of the city, and the people that are involved in these kind of brutal situations that happen throughout, or how the film is actually separated into acts, each with a very seemingly strange name at first, at least until you start to figure out more of what's actually going on here, and who Nicolas Cage's character really is. But if you're looking for a film that has an interesting style that's pretty much different from everything else that's out there, while telling a story that we've seen in the past just done in a very different way, I think you're definitely going to enjoy this film. But with that being said, I did think the ending could have been better to this film, as it does ultimately feel like a disappointing conclusion to the story, as we built everything up for the entire film for it really to lead to what ends up being an anticlimax. It does seem to be the point that they're trying to get across with the story like this, that's more about the journey and finding out information about the characters, and them kind of working certain things out along the way, but nonetheless I do feel like the ending was rather anticlimactic and probably could have been done better, so it doesn't feel largely pointless by the time it's over. But with that being said, overall I enjoyed this movie, and I feel like it's something that'll probably be nominated for an Oscar at some point in the future, if only for Nicolas Cage's performance in the film, which is definitely going to be the biggest highlight of this film for anyone seeing it, and something that'll get the most buzz surrounding him. He's an actor that a lot of people root for and have always wanted to see do better after a long string of being in terrible films. So if this and some of the other movies in recent years is signaling a kind of return to form for Nicolas Cage, I definitely wouldn't mind, and I'd like to see just exactly where he goes from this point onward. Make sure to subscribe and enable all notifications, so you can stay up to date with all of my videos. Thanks for watching, and make sure to stick around, because there's a lot more to come in the future.
Yeah, and you better subscribe.